Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our viewers on YouTube and Microsoft Teams. Today we have another speech, but before I do start and give you an introduction, if I ask Yusuf Ahmedi Sahib to lead us in Tilawat.
Assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. In translation, Surah Al-Alaq, chapter 96, verses 1 to 6. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed. In the name of Allah, the most gracious ever merciful. Recite thou in the name of thy Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Recite, and thy Lord is most beneficent, who taught man by the pen, taught man what he knew not. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah Yusuf Saib. It seems like an Ahmedi affair today because we've got quite a few of them, but let me introduce you our speaker for tonight, Mohamed Arshad Ahmedi Saib, who is a Regulatory Affairs Global Director for a Chinese pharmaceutical company that specializes in anti-cancer injectables. He's been serving as for some time and still is as a National Secretary for Ishaat Publications for the Ahmedi Muslim Association in the UK. His speech today will be on the topic, the pursuit of knowledge. So without any further ado, if I could request Mohamed Arshad Ahmedi Sahib, if you could start your lecture for about 40 odd minutes, and in 20 minutes we can have some questions and answers.
Okay, Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I think I'll begin this intriguing subject of knowledge, the pursuit of it, with some popular and memorable quotes from various non-Muslim eminent personalities from, not too distant past, well after the Holy Prophet ﷺ came onto the world stage. Perhaps the definition of what is the pursuit of knowledge is best described by K. Redfield Jamison. She's a contemporary American clinical psychologist and writer. I think you can see her quotation on your screen perhaps. Her description of knowledge is this: the pursuit of knowledge is an intoxicant, a lure that scientists and explorers have known from ancient times. Indeed, exhilaration in the pursuit of knowledge is part of what has kept our species so adaptive. So this knowledge and the pursuit of it keeps the world ticking and moving forward. Otherwise it will come to a halt. It's knowledge that keeps the world going. And other famous people with the quotations, and I've picked also the great Albert Einstein. I've picked two from him. The first one is, the pursuit of knowledge is more valuable than its possession. So meaning that we should not be satisfied with what little knowledge we have, but to always keep on striving to learn more and more, and not be greedy and store your knowledge to yourself and not impart it to others. His other quotation which I've selected is, science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. Now, Dr. Abdul Salam exemplifies the first part. He always relied on the Holy Quran as his guide. which helped him to make astonishing discoveries in the field of physics. And as for the second part, while we're presently in the month of Ramadan and we had to agree on a right date of the sighting of the moon, and the same will happen when the Eid day is announced. Now, most of our non-Ahmedi Muslims fall into the second category. I would say that they don't use science to their advantage, which Allah has given us to use our brains, and we rely on science with the aid of meteorological office to do the job for us. Now, Mahatma Gandhi also made a very interesting quote that is in line with our Islamic teachings, in fact. He says, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." Extremely profound. We should always be on the straight and narrow because no one knows when one will die, and perhaps not have a chance to repent for one's sins. And on the other hand, we should never give up on the acquiring of more knowledge, because you may live to a ripe old age and you cannot just stay stagnant with what knowledge you have stored in your young years. Now, Confucius is a very popular Chinese, and I think you got him on the screen as well. He's a philosopher. His quotation I've selected is, "Real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance." This is another quote to reiterate the fact that what we know or think we know is no way sufficient to be regarded as knowledgeable, because deep down we are ignorant of so many things. Malcolm Forbes is a philanthropist and is famous for his Forbes Rich List, a very popular book. His quotation is, "The purpose of education is to replace an empty mind with an open one." Now, we know that all the prophets of God met with opposition from people who had closed minds. It was only through perseverance and help from God that people's minds were opened to receive true message, and they became the better for it. And the last quote I have is from our good friend George Bernard Shaw, who, as we know, has spoken very highly of Islam and of the Holy Prophet ﷺ himself. And I found this the most pertinent for today's lecture, especially with our young audience and parents listening perhaps. His quotation is, what we want is to see the child in pursuit of knowledge, and not knowledge in pursuit of the child. What a dream of a thought it is for parents with young children who would like them to be keen on the pursuit of knowledge of their own accord and not being forced to do so. So, having had these quotations in the background, now we move on to the main subject matter of knowledge and its pursuit. Now, this conjures up a vision of libraries and books of all kinds: fiction, history, religion, science, politics, poetry, even cookery, as this now seems to be in vogue, seeing a whole host of food programs on TV. Being Muslims and following the example of our noble Holy Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it becomes our duty and raison d'être to read, to recite, and to convey, because God's very first command to the best of his creation was Iqra. And at that precise moment, Islam was born. So the importance of trying to follow this single instruction carries with it a heavy responsibility. The verses that Yusuf beautifully recited at the beginning were the very first words that were revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Cave Hira on a night in the month of Ramadan in 610 AD, when he was 40 years of age and the mantle of prophethood was put upon his shoulders. On that night of destiny, and the Prophet lay on the floor of the cave, his mind locked deep in contemplation. These verses were revealed, and the words became branded on his soul. Recite thou in the name of thy Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Recite, and thy Lord is the most beneficent, who taught man by the pen, taught man what he knew not. These verses have tremendous meaning. They command the Prophet to stand up and be ready to proclaim the name of the one God, the one Creator. The verses foretold a time when the world would be taught all manner of knowledge through the instrumentality of the pen, and would be taught things never heard of before. In fact, if deep reflection, the verses constitute a prophecy pointing to the advent of the promised Messiah, Islam, who was to be heralded as Sultan-e-Qalam, the champion of the pen. Hazur Aydar Ta'ala bin Nasir Aziz, in a khutbah Jummah a few years ago, based his sermon on the Quranic prayer, Rabbi Zidni Ilma, O my Lord, increase me in knowledge. It's from Surah Taha, chapter 20, verse 115. And he expounded the significance Islam lays on seeking knowledge. Huzur explained that when this Quranic verse was revealed to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he was around the age of 55 to 56. So in today's terms, he was an Ansar Safiable when this revelation was revealed to him. That signifies that there is no age limit or time span set for seeking knowledge. Indeed, the Holy Prophet ﷺ enjoined that man should seek knowledge from childhood till old age, not quite from the cradle to the grave, but near enough. Allah revealed the perfect book to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, replete with knowledge of every conceivable kind, knowledge that was revealed 14 to 1500 years ago, which the people of the world are gradually finding out through research. The Holy Prophet ﷺ likened assemblies where knowledge is sought to gardens of paradise. However, he cautioned not to seek knowledge in order to feel superior to another or to use it for self-promotion, and said that Allah eases the route to paradise for one who sets out to seek knowledge. Huzur continued saying that it is Allah's promise to the followers of the promised Messiah salam, that he would grant them knowledge and cognizance. Cognizance is awareness, perception, realization. So therefore, it is the duty of all Ahmedis to work extra hard to acquire knowledge. He advised students to study the Holy Quran in conjunction with their other subjects, and said that this would open avenues for them that no worldly teachers could show them. And this was exemplified by our own Dr. Abdul Salam, who married religion to science. Huzur also drew attention to the erudite treasure of the books by the promised Messiah salam, and the wealth of spiritual knowledge and discernment they contain. He said people of all ages should read these books and discover ways that lead to spiritual as well as academic development. We learn from the blessed model of the Holy Prophet ﷺ that the traditional assumption of learning in childhood, action in youth, and wisdom in old age should be combined at all times, and the eagerness for achieving these should be continuous. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "It is a fine act of charity when a Muslim seeks knowledge and then teaches it to another Muslim, and that when people have knowledge of something, they should impart it to others, and if they do not know about something, they should say, Allahu Alam, that is to say, Allah knows all." In this regard, I would like to highlight a part of Darsul Quran that Khalifa Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala delivered on the 15th of March 1992 during the month of Ramadan, and which was replayed on MTA last year. And also, if you know, this year, his previous sermons are being shown every day on MTA, and we should really make it a point to see those wonderful dars. Now, this particular dars was on Surah Al Imran, verse 141. But to explain his point, he gave an excellent exposition on the word ilm, I-L-M, ilm, which is used many times in the Holy Quran, and showed the difference between the two words ilm and irfan. He explained that ilm is in a nutshell knowledge, which is derived by 5 senses, and alima, which is a derivative of ilm, is to acquire knowledge. So as one receives a message, that message is ilm. When you compute that message and begin to understand the message from within, that course of computation within the mind is called irfan. Zur selected a few verses of the Holy Quran to demonstrate the difference between these two words. I will just give one example due to brevity of time. This verse is from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 33. They said, I think you have the Arabic on the screen. They said, Holy art thou, no knowledge have we except what thou hast taught us. Surely thou art all-knowing, the wise. Verse 33. So Talim is a process of learning, and Talim is teaching someone. Just like the Holy Prophet ﷺ was taught by Allah Almighty, he in turn then taught others. Thus, transfer of one person's irfan to another is called talim. And one who has learned the wisdom, he has irfan. It might be difficult to follow, but on deep reflection, you will know the meaning of these words. Intuitive knowledge, or knowledge you feel is the truth, and you know is the truth, but is not accepted by you, is also called irfan. For example, when truth came to others in the form of the Holy Quran and the Holy Prophet ﷺ during his time, they had their sixth sense telling them, so that intuitive knowledge has been referred as irfan. Apparently, those who did not accept the Holy Prophet initially did not have ilm, but they had irfan. So ilm can be separate from irfan. So going back with the topic in hand, I go back to Hazur Khalifa Khames's advice to students to seek knowledge with dignity and equanimity, and to be respectful towards those from whom knowledge is sought. In light of a hadith on the importance of learning various languages, Hazur spoke at length, explicating the objectives of the children of the Waqf-e-Nau scheme. Hazur urged Waqf-e-Nau girls to look into acquiring fluency in languages with the objective of translating Jamaat publications. He instructed the Waqf-e-Nau department to keep records of the various careers the children aspire to follow, so that the Jamaat would have a clear indication of the future professions of the Waqf-e-Nau children. Hazur asked the parents to continue guiding the Waqf-e-Nau children towards careers that would be advantageous to the Jamaat. In particular, he urged mothers to increase their own knowledge in order to facilitate better training of their children. He asked them to concentrate on the development of the children with support and help of the fathers. Hazur then reiterated the paramount significance of mothers acquiring religious knowledge in order to safeguard the next generations. The words, Rabbi Zidni Ilma, O my Lord, increase me in knowledge, show the great importance that the Quran attaches to the acquirement of knowledge. Even the Holy Prophet ﷺ, to whom was vouchsafed knowledge about generations that had passed away and about those that are yet to be born, is taught to pray that his knowledge may be increased. He is further reported to have said, seek knowledge though it may be found in a country as far away as China. This verse also implies that all knowledge is of two kinds. Firstly, that which is vouchsafed to man through revelation and which has found its perfect manifestation in the Quran, and secondly, that which man acquires by his own effort and labor. And it is this second kind of knowledge for the acquisition of which man is enjoined in this verse to make ceaseless effort. Hazrat Abu Hurairah narrates, I heard the Holy Prophet ﷺ say, the word of wisdom is the lost property of a Muslim, so that wherever he finds it, he should take it as he is most entitled to it. From Tirmidhi. In a Friday sermon of March the 22nd, 2002, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad Khalifa Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala elucidated the subject of the divine attributes of Al-Aziz, the Mighty. With reference to Quranic verses and ahadith expounding seeking knowledge of Allah's creation, Hazur said that when a person embarks on the way to seek knowledge, Allah the Exalted places that person on the way that leads to paradise. Presenting the promised Messiah Salam's exposition, Hazur said that those who fear Allah have in actual fact the true knowledge of the divine beauty and majesty and are deeply humble. Those devoid of humility cannot ever justifiably be considered scholars in matters of faith. So I would now like to touch briefly on the sources of knowledge and how we can source them, or how they are sourced. Now, the promised Messiah Islam in Malfuzat, volume 10, page 402, explained, he said that knowledge has three stages. Knowledge through inference, knowledge through observation, and knowledge through experience. An illustration of these three stages of knowledge for a man of common understanding is this. When a person, for example, observes smoke at a distance, his reasoning through association concludes the existence of fire because the former does not exist without the latter. This is knowledge through inference. But if the person is close to the fire and can see the fire with his own eyes as a certainty, then this is knowledge through observation. However, if he gets so close to the fire, touches it, feels its warmth, maybe gets burnt with his own hands, this is knowledge through experience. Psychological analysis of knowledge also indicates several stages of understanding and competence. The first stage obviously begins with simple information about a subject. When the information is complete, it becomes understanding. When this understanding is put to some practical use, it becomes a skill. A person with most competent skill may be called a specialist in that field or subject, or a consultant nowadays. There is no end to learning, but perfection belongs to Allah alone, keeping that in mind all the time. Knowledge is power. Man can rule forces of nature through knowledge. As a matter of fact, the whole universe has been created to serve man. The Holy Quran says, Allah is He who has subjected the sea to you, that ships may sail thereon by His command, that you may seek of His bounty and that you may be grateful. We are also told to reflect on history, to increase our knowledge of what happened in the past. History provides great lessons of guidance for people to follow what is righteous and avoid what always leads to disaster. Chapter 35, verse 45, Allah says, have they not traveled in the earth and seen how evil was the end of those who were before them, and they were stronger than these in power. Allah is not such that anything in the heavens or the earth can frustrate His plans. Verily, He is all-knowing, powerful. Another thing to improve our knowledge is to study the social conditions in the world. The Holy Quran stresses the need to study the social conditions in the world in order to understand different cultures and the way different people live. As a matter of fact, the Holy Quran invites us to study all the social sciences, including psychology, sociology, geography, economics, and philology. Now, philology is the study of literary texts and of written records, the establishment of their authenticity and their original form, and the determination of their meaning. So all these social sciences should be learned to understand other people's ways, and secondly, to communicate with the world effectively what will be in their best interests in the light of the teachings of Islam. As Muslims, we know that the purpose of life is to worship Allah, but it is equally important that to fulfill the purpose, we must invite the whole world to Allah. We may not be able to invite the world if we do not understand the social conditions prevalent in the world. The Holy Quran says in Surah Al-Ankabut, chapter 29, verses 21 to 23, say, travel in the earth and see how He originated the creation. Then will Allah create the second creation. Surely Allah has power over all things. He punishes whom He pleases and shows mercy unto whom He pleases. And to Him will you be turned back. And you cannot frustrate the designs of Allah in the earth, nor in the heavens, nor have you any friend or helper beside Allah. So the study of social conditions prevalent in the world, especially in the West today, indicates how man has lost his way to God. Pursuit of pleasure and wealth dominate the agenda of most human beings. Their lives are full of contradictions, and they have no peace of mind or real happiness and satisfaction. All this seems to be the consequence of mixed up priorities in life. This life is temporary, and the more we forget God, the more we lose in this and the next life. Now I will turn to the subject of libraries, which are a source of a powerhouse of knowledge. I'm sure, especially in our Jamaat, the missionaries will agree that for them our books are their weapons, which are to be held safe and to be used effectively to combat challenges of any kind that life throws at them. Libraries are a collection of any materials for study and enjoyment. Around 2006, a couple of years before the Khilafah century, Hazur Ta'ala bin Aziz instructed all Jamaats to conduct a survey to find out what ordinary members of the Jamaat had in the form of books in their households. Books like the Holy Quran and in which languages, books of the Hadith, books of the Prophet Messiah Salam, and books of the Khulafa. It turned out to be a very sobering experience for me as I started to conduct a survey in the United Kingdom, as I received very few responses that were not encouraging at all. The aim of the survey was to instill in Jamaat members the need to acquire knowledge by ensuring that they had the basic books in their possession, which were to be read and attempt to understand. However, it was not until 2012 that after the proceedings of Jalsa Salana, Hazur, in his meeting with missionaries from around the world, instructed all emirs to start building libraries for them. He identified certain books that needed to be on this list. I developed a spreadsheet that includes names of all the mosques and mission houses in the UK, and had the names of all these books, and added a few more to try and make the libraries as comprehensive as possible. This has been a very time-consuming project, which is still ongoing. At the moment, for example, in the UK, we have about 35 libraries in mission houses and mosques. But these libraries also have books not just on religion, And our Jamaat books are books on secular knowledge, on history, on science, on philosophy and biographies. And even in the Holy Quran guides us in Surah Al-Takwir, chapter 81, verse 11 to 12. وَيَزَسَّفُ نُشِرَتْ. And when books are spread and the heaven is laid bare. The reference clearly seems to be to the vast circulation of newspapers, journals and books, and to the system of libraries and reading rooms and such other places and means of spreading knowledge in the latter days, in the time of the promised Messiah and the Mahdi. The reference in the verse, "and the heaven is laid bare," may be to the vast strides that the science of astronomy has made in the latter days, which has startled the world. The verse also signifies that with the advent of the promised Messiah, salam, the doors of spiritual sciences will be thrown wide open. A hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is helpful in interpreting this verse. He is reported to have said, this is from Bukhari, Kitab al-Anbiya, Babu Nuzle Isa ibn Maryam, when Isa, the son of Mary, will come, there will be an abundance of wealth, and this wealth will flow so abundantly that nobody will accept it. So now it is up to us, followers of the Messiah salam, to ensure that this wealth is presented in such a way that all those who become aware of it begin to accept it. We have two great weapons bestowed upon us for this task: prayers and the books of the promised Messiah salam. This prophecy was magnificently fulfilled in the person of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian salam, the promised Messiah and the Mahdi, in whom various prophecies about the second coming of Jesus have been fulfilled. He himself declared in Brahine Ahmediyya, volume 5, page 117, the treasures that lay buried for more than 1,000 years are now being distributed by me to the one who is ready to accept them. The promised Messiah salam wrote more than 90 books and issued many announcements elucidating the deeper meanings of the Holy Quran and beauties of Islam. He challenged all other faiths to come up with anything which comes even fractionally close, but with no response. As he says, आज़माइश के लिए कोई ना आया हर शन, हर मुखालिफ को मुकाबल पे बुलाया हमने. No one came forward to test me, even though I issued challenges and invitation all around. This is from an Urdu couplet from Ayn Kamalat of Islam, page 224. So this is beautifully delineated in a poem written by Naseem Safi Sahib, who served the Ahmadi movement in Islam in West Africa for almost 25 years as chief Ahmadiyya missionary, and later served as Wakil Tasnif, in charge of publications, when he authored a book introducing the books of the promised Messiah salam, wonderfully providing brief synopsis of all the books. The poem is entitled The Heavenly Treasure, and I will read it to you. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, how truly did he say that people will not like to take when Mahdi comes to pay, that he will give them much, so much, and they will then refuse, though it may look strange enough and someone may confuse. For who is there who does not like to get and get it more? Though people say too much is bad, it is money that doesn't bore. How great a pity they do not know what Mahdi had to give. They think in terms of leons and pounds. With this they think they live. The fact is this, that people know, and this should give them pleasure. The Mahdi was to give them all, not money, but heavenly treasure. And this he did in terms of books, with life and vigor and zeal. They do not talk of worldly things, with word of God they deal. But tell me, what do people say? Such matters they confuse. A few do come and like to take, the rest of them refuse. And this is, I'm sure, what we find in the world today, but the struggle must go on. And there are genuine seekers after truth, including many non-Muslims, whose thirst for knowledge is never quenched. And I will give you two recent examples that happened recently. Being Secretary Ishaat, you know, I do get requests for books from not just UK, but from around the world, because people who become aware of the community, they go to Islam International Publications and make requests. So these two requests came from America, and they specifically asked for the 5-volume Holy Quran. Now, the first one is a genealogy researcher from the United States called Dwight Redford. I received an email request through Islam International Publication. He's from Utah for the 5-volume. So I contacted the US Secretary Ishaat and asked, if he has that book to send it to him. But they were out of stock. And luckily I had a few in my stock. So I was able to, to get in contact with him, get his address. And therein started our conversation and friendship. And I always spoke with him yesterday by email, because we constantly keep in touch. Now he gave me the background why he was looking specifically for the 5-volume Holy Quran. He says it's transpired that being a genealogy researcher, he was doing a research on Jesus ﷺ. So he had read almost every book under the sun on Jesus ﷺ, but he had found the Messiah Jesus in India the most intriguing and the most plausible. So in his research, he had availed Ghulam Farid Sahib's 1-volume commentary. And because he was so fascinated by his commentary, he found that there was a 5-volume Holy Quran as well, which would delve deeper into the subject. That is when he contacted Jamaat, and I was able to send him a set. He has been extremely grateful since then, and we have stuck up a very strong friendship. I will give one quotation from his email, which I found very interesting, and I think we could learn from as well. Sorry. Yes, he said in his email, I asked him about, whether he had heard of our Jamaat. He said, yes, I'm somewhat familiar with the Ahmedi community. I do not know anyone except for you, of course. My personal life, and this is the important bit, he said, my personal life has always been lived by the philosophy of gaining wisdom wherever I can find it. And that is actually the saying of Holy Prophet ﷺ. So he said he was working on these PowerPoints for Jesus in India, and he said he's not there to make people convinced, but just to make them think. He said, I've introduced your community. He said nobody had ever heard of the Ahmadis before. Now they have. So, as I said, I still keep my friendship with him, and he's invited me to Utah, and I'm one of these days, inshallah, I will go there and meet him. The other one is also from US, is a young Andrew Brackenbridge. His is also a very interesting story. He contacted Islam International Publications, requesting specifically a copy of the 5-volume Holy Quran. And this is what he said, the background, why he searched for this specifically. He says, it will save me from having to travel, I think, 30 kilometers one way to go to the library at my university to read it. That is how I found out about it. I've looked at several different translations throughout my life of the Holy Quran, and none of them was really readable for me like this one. This apparently is the one that I have been looking for these last few years. And of them all, I like this one the best, the one you're going to be sending me. He said, I ran across it about 3 weeks ago in the university library. And so basically every day for the last 3 weeks, now look at this. This is the guy searching for knowledge. He says, for the last 3 weeks, I've been driving that distance down there to the university library and sitting there reading it. I've come to have an affinity towards it and for Islam in the last several years. I've sat back and looked at how personally I am, how I personally am and how I believe, how I treat people, and then look at what Islam teaches, and it turns out I've been doing the same things all my life. So basically, to cut this story short, he used to travel daily for 3 weeks to read the 5-volume. So, as I said, I was in a fortunate position to post him a set, and he was eternally grateful. And even today, I received an email from him because we also keep in touch, and he's looking to taking the step to join Islam. So moving on, how are we doing for time? 5 more minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Apart from the books of the Promised Messiah, Salam, Jamaat has been blessed with other writers like the Khulafa, especially Khalifa Sani, and Khalifa Rabi, and Chaudhry Rasulullah Khan Sahib. And there are other Jamaat scholars from around the world who are adding useful publications for Talim, Tabligh, and Tarbiyat. I call them the 3 T's. How wonderful our Jamaat system is. These 3 T's go hand in hand. Talim for educating ourselves, Tarbiyat to reform ourselves, and finally Tabligh to take our message to the world. And by the grace of Allah, all 3 of our national secretaries, who normally are very active during the course of the year, have surpassed themselves during this pandemic and also through the holy month of Ramadan. And courtesy of Talim, Secretary Talim, we have this current program going every day during the month of Ramadan. In fact, the Jamaat starts educating its members at a very young age, and Lajna Imala and Waqf departments are producing excellent material in fulfilling the Quranic prophecy of وَإِذَا نُشِرَتْ. May Allah enable us to educate ourselves to the level that we are able to spread the message of Islam Ahmediyyat to the entire world, for which the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the promised Messiah ﷺ was sent. So with that, I think I'll conclude my talk, and maybe at the end I'll just make you aware of the workings of the Jamaat publications. There are several wakalats have been created to ensure the efficient dissemination of the books. They are created. The Wakalat Tasnif is responsible for translation for the Muslima's books and any revisions and new publications. Wakilul Ishaat is responsible for the typesetting and printing. Before both these are started at the time of Khalifa Sani. Some years ago, Khalifa Khamis established another Wakalat, Wakilul Tasil, who are responsible for the distribution of our books to all parts of the world. And then also a few years ago, the Wakalat Tamil or Tanfeed, which looks after the India desk while ordering books from Nashr Ishaat Qadian, was also established. Jamaat has printing presses in 12 countries, including Qadian, Rakim Press in London, East and West Africa, Ivory Coast, a new one in Australia to print small books and leaflets. In Rabwa, we have two presses, Nusrat Art Press and Ziyal Islam, which with limited printing of only publications that are not allowed. And at the end, if I can maybe ask Wakar to show that clip of Hazur's video, maybe a few minutes towards the end, where he was in India and he was meeting some teachers and their students. Is it possible to show that at all? Just a 1 or 2 minutes?
Yes, I'll play that now.
ਤੇ ਕਿਆ ਹੀ ਬਾਤ ਕੱਲ ਹੀ ਆਏ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਰਾ ਮਹੱਲਾ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਹੈਰਾਨ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਇੰਨੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਲਾਈਟ ਹੈ ਇੰਨਾ ਉਹ ਰਾਤ
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਗੱਲ ਠੀਕ ਕਰਾ
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਹਰ ਥਾਂ ਹੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਚੰਗਾ ਆਦਮੀ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਥਾਂ ਹੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਦੀਆਂ ਜਾਊਗੀ ਤੇ ਸਾਲ 'ਚ 2 ਵਾਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਠੀਕ ਆ ਬਾਹਰ ਬੜੇ ਸੋਖਵਾਰ ਮਾਨ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਕਿਆ ਹੀ ਬਾਤ ਹੈ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਹੀ ਗਏ ਹੋ ਹਾਂਜੀ
बच्चे जरा इधर आओ जिससे आओ मेरे बच्चों की खिदमत में हो जाएगा कौन समझ
क्योंकि ये परिवार ने ਇਹੋ ਹੀ ਕੌਮ ਨੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੀ ਨੇ ਅੱਛੀ ਦੀ ਬੜੀ MBA करके
और जगह पे
काम सब
बड़ी खिदमत कर रहे हैं माशाल्लाह
MCA कर रहे हैं पढ़ रहे
और ये कहाँ की है ये कहाँ की है सारी
स्कूल की टीचर हैं कुछ एसएन कॉलेज
स्कूलों की टीचर है बच्चों तो तुसी इन्नी अच्छी माशाल्लाह पहले ही कर रहे हो
नहीं फिर ਤੁਹਾਡਾ
आप लोग बड़ी खुशकिस्मत हैं कि ऐसे लोग आपको मिल गए जिसमें जिन्होंने आपकी तालीमी और तरबियती तरक्की की तरफ तवज्जो दे रहे हैं इसलिए इससे पूरा फ़ायदा उठाएं और अपनी ज़िंदगी में संवारें क्योंकि आप ही हैं जो आइंदा कौम की तरबियत करने की ज़िम्मेदार होंगी आपकी गोदों से बच्चे पढ़ के निकलेंगे और जिस कौम की माएँ अच्छी हो जाएं बच्चियाँ अच्छी हो जाएं वो कौम फिर हमेशा तरक्की करती है तो ख़ास ख्याल रखें और इससे फ़ायदा उठाएं जो कोशिश आपके लिए हो रही है शुक्रिया
So yeah, there we have it. I think that was quite pertinent at the end that Hazur was admiring the teacher's work and also guiding the students, the young girl students, to value the teacher. Okay?
Jazakallah Ahmedi Saba for lovely lectures there. We've got about 13 questions to try to do in 14 minutes, so I won't waste any time and I'll start off with YouTube and Waqar Saab can read from Microsoft Teams. So the first question is from Imran Masood Sahib, who asks, can you please comment on the concept of intellectual property and acquisition of knowledge in the context of advice or for profiting from knowledge acquired? So let me read that again. Please comment on the concept of intellectual property and the acquisition of knowledge in the context of advice of not profiting from knowledge acquired.
Intellectual property is something that's I think is in business it's a very asset that they have, but I don't know, knowledge that one has within one's mind is not an intellectual property. I don't think you can equate it to that. I think it's comparing apples with pears. So I wouldn't like to go further on this.
Okay. Waqar Saab, do you want to?
Yes, there's a question here from Nadeem Anwar Sahib. Assalamu alaikum. What should be the balance between attaining religious knowledge as opposed to secular knowledge?
Well, I think we should take the example of Professor Salam. He married the two. They was equally balanced. I think Hazur has, all the Khulafa has said, secular knowledge without religious knowledge is not the complete thing. Without you, for completeness, you have to have religious knowledge in the background, the fear of God, that has always to be there. If that is your guidelines, I think then you'll always succeed. Well, no, I remember Khalifa Rabi used to say many times that people used to come and say they would not let their children go to Jamaat function because they are studying. And they used to come years after and say that our children have gone astray because they were kept away from Jamaat. Because put too much emphasis on secular knowledge and, ignore the basic cause for being alive in this world is to worship God. So, you have to balance it, and that only can do in your personal lives yourselves.
Jazakallah. Ahmedi Saab. Ittisam Khan from YouTube asks, knowledge is power, as you have said, and some people use this power for their advantage. What would you say to this?
Well, we see political people in power, how they sometimes abuse it. When somebody is elected to a high post, there's two ways they can go. They can, some of them misuse that power for their own advantage, or I don't know, but it does have power, but I think you have to be very careful how you use it. You'll always be caught out in the end. We've seen in the media and the Iraq war and how the powerful giants, rolled the other Muslims who were trying to fight, a fair fight, but because of their superior power, and they used their power to influence and the drastic results, and they were proved wrong in the end. So you have to have justice when you dispense your power. Okay.
Next question is from Ramin Masood, who asks, what are your tips on time management so that we can acquire more knowledge within a shorter space of time?
It's a $6 million question, huh? See, how you arrange your time is up to you. How you have to balance what are your priorities in life, what are your work commitments, what are your family commitments, and you have to plan things. You can't just go blindly and say, I'll just go work and never, not think about repercussions of when to go home. You have to spend time with your family if you have a family. So all these things have to be balanced. It's trial and error experience. So there's no hard and fast fixed rule on this. You have to seek Allah's help in balancing your time, give equal time. Always make sure that for the reason you've been put on this earth, that for those 5 times that you only take 5-10 minutes, those should be set aside and not be interfered by your other activities.
Jazakallah. Ihtisham asks again, and I think you answered this in your lecture, but for the sake of asking the question, I'll ask this. And he asks, can you get knowledge from books or novels, or do you have to get knowledge from Islamic books like the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
No, I don't know whether you, Irfan, is it his name?
Ihtisham.
Yeah, whether he ever had an opportunity to meet Khalifa Rabi and go into his office, and you see the wide range of books that he had in his office, not just religious books. He loved to read biographies. He loved to do historical books. His was so widely read, and we have to read other books as well. Living in the West, we know when we travel on the public transport, when we do get a chance to travel again, you will see, especially the Western people, they're always reading something while down the escalators, in the tube. There is always learning, reading something. I mean, when I was young, did English and I read Shakespeare, Milton. All these added value to my overall bringing up. So you have to, as I said in my speech, you have to be aware of the prevalent situation in the world, of how even reading novels is good. You have to be entertained sometimes. They're very imaginative minds. I have a young girl, they like to read novels as well. So you should not cut them out completely.
Okay, next question. There isn't a name given, but they ask, could you please share the list of books for mission houses to have in our libraries, both religious and secular? Jazakallah.
Well, if you speak with your local missionaries, as I said, there are more than 30 now, and we've given them a list of books. Also, to make you aware, 2 years ago, there was a Majlis Shura proposal that was implemented, that we produce a catalog to be sent to every household, which we did post out to every household. And then we also making the local secretary Shahs more proactive in talking to their members, getting a list of books that they're interested in, because these catalog has a synopsis of all the books, and then we can provide them. And there's some Jamaats have started that already. But please, yeah, we haven't got an online. We now, as we are speaking, we are developing an Ishaat section on the Jamaat UK website, where you'll be able to access all the books that we have in English, Urdu, and Arabic mainly, but we do have books in other languages for tabligh purposes. So yeah, please keep our lookout for this website that'll be coming out soon.
Lovely, Jazakallah, Ahmedi Saab. Umar asks, there is so much knowledge to acquire. How is it possible for a normal individual to acquire and then retain all the knowledge? What steps can we take, if there are any? Now that's from Umar.
Badam khaya karo. Eat a lot of almonds, make you sharp. No, this is, prayer is the first thing you need to know. Allah doesn't overburden you. So you will learn and try to keep as much as you can. It's like a sponge, the earlier you learn, that's why we say children should start early. They're like a sponge. They will absorb everything. How do we get Hafiz Qurans rather? Because they learn at a young age and they're able to absorb. Not everybody can become a Hafiz. Certain people are selected for that. So, it all depends what subjects you want to do. And, if you're an English student, you will read, you'll be able to quote Shakespeare openly by heart. So it depends what field you're in. And then Allah will give you the capacity. You have to ask His help. You won't get all this knowledge in one small brain. You seek His help.
Okay. Next question is from Atiyatul Alim and Munifa. The question is, can anybody write a book for the Jamaat?
Yes, there is a process now. There are many people, Secretary Shah, I do get inundated with books from private authors, people who write books on the experiences, on historical things, and that has to be vetted through a book committee that Hazur established about 5 years ago now. Dr. Shabir Bhatti is the chairman, and there are 4 or 5 members in that. So those books have to go through that, because you have to check for their accurateness, and because if they're being sold from a Jamaat bookshop, we are responsible that whatever is sold has been vetted and is approved. So you do encourage people to write. I know there's some young writers who are approached with it. Some is writing on Jesus Christ and other things. So when they book comes to us, then we send it to Wakil Tasnif is another door that we can use for getting their approval. So do pick a subject that is needed. Don't just go blindly and think people will want to put it on the Jamaat bookstalls. So be careful and get advice from us. It's not a problem.
Jazakallah. We've only got literally 2 minutes left, but like I said earlier, it was an Ahmedi affair. I've got a question here on YouTube from Roshan Ahmedi, and he asks, how can we ensure that our pursuit of secular knowledge doesn't interfere with our pursuit of religious knowledge?
Yeah, I think I just answered that. I think a few questions before that you have to balance it. Like I said, the good example of Prophet Abdul Salam, he used science, but the Quran was always his main focus, never diverted away from that, from the teaching of the Quran, and he always led him. So, you use that as well.
Lovely. Do you want to ask one more, Waqar Saab?
Yes, this question is on behalf of a 12-year-old named Jalaluddin Shams. And the question is from Nasiruddin Shams. What advice would you give my son, Jalaluddin Shams, who is keen to go to Jamia and also to become an author and illustrator?
Is that 3 questions in one, is it? We want to go to Jamia and become an author and an illustrator. I mean, is an illustrator meaning in graphics? I mean, these are
Possibly.
different vocational aspirations. You know, I mean, the best thing is to ask Huzur for guidance. You know, if you're in conflict, where do you need to go? Prayer and obviously writing to Huzur and meeting him and let him guide you what your strengths are. You know, as I said, Jamia is not for everybody. You have to be committed, really, really committed to Jamaat and the world sacrifice of your whole life. So it all depends on your personal circumstances and also your parents, how they feel, because you need their support. So all these things have to be put in the equation, and then you could make a decision which hopefully will be the right one for you. Good luck to you.
Jazakallah, Ahmedi Saab. I think time has caught us up as ever, and just to remind everybody, tomorrow's lecture is on Islamic Empire, lecture 2 by Muhammad Iqbal Sahib, who's also on the Voice of Islam, so that'll be also very interesting. Jazakallah to all our viewers and for all the questions that have come in, and apologies we couldn't ask all of them. And last but certainly not least, Jazakallah to Ahmedi Saab for taking his valuable time and joining us today. Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah.